Hey, what's going on, YouTubers? Big Philly with Poor Boys RC. Thanks again for tuning in. On today's episode of Poor Boys RC, we're going to take the Tamiya DF03 Dark Impact. One thing I want to change on it is the dampers. They leave a little something to be desired. I get it, we're keeping costs low, but actually that doesn't look too bad. The back is really bouncy. And really the gist of it is that this kit does not come with oil-filled shocks. It just comes with a friction damper. So we want to upgrade to some oil-filled shocks. And which oil-filled shocks are we going to use, you may be asking? Of course, the Injoras, which we just did a review on. These blue beauties right here are going to be installed on this kit. Now, after having these shocks for just a little while longer here and kind of playing with them in different spring rates and stuff, I must say that they're a little gritty feeling. They're not the smoothest shock out there. They look absolutely beautiful. Still a budget shock, still not your high-end shock, that is for sure. So without further ado, let's dive in and start changing these shocks around. So first things first, I'm just going to take off all 4 tires just to make it easier to do what we got to do, get in to all the tight spaces we have to get into. So the first thing we'll notice here, guys, is that I'll start off with the front shocks. And one thing about the way these are set up is that these shocks rest on this on a ball. Now, that's not going to work with this shock because this has a metal eyelet which will not go over that ball. So we're going to have to get into the toolbox and get a bit creative to make these work. So we've encountered our first challenge with the shock upgrade, and I'll show you what that is. Now, these Injoras have this metal eyelet at the base and at the top of each shock, which is a beautiful little thing. Doesn't really affect us so much at the top shock, but at the bottom, it definitely affects us. This eyelet is too wide. It won't fit in the lower A-arm. Check it out. So we've got these 3 optional mounting holes right here, and this needs to drop right inside, just like the stock plastic one would. Drops right in. This metal one does not. It's too big. So we have a couple options to make this work. Option 1, we can take the Dremel and I can shave off a little bit of this metal, shave off about 1 millimeter so it'll fit in that hole. Or option 2, I can see if this lower shock mount will fit on this shock. I'm gonna go with option 1 myself because I think just for the 2 seconds it'll take with the Dremel, I can knock that down a bit and get it to fall into place. So that's what we're gonna do. Anytime you're working with a Dremel, always, always, always protect your eyes. And just like that, guys, I just took the Dremel to it, knocked down that lip a little bit. So I'll show you the non-modified one versus modified. So this one hasn't been cut yet, and this one has been. So you can see how I just knocked a few mils off each side. And now this guy drops right into place. Beautiful. Just like that. That guy there. And we'll put a nut on the end. It'll look kind of cool and have it nice and stable. 1 down, 1 to go. And yes, I am aware of the fact that having these 2 nuts on here is completely useless, but I just think it looks cool. I think it sets off the rest of the body and the rest of the chassis. It makes it look really nice. Gives a little pop in the front end. Why not? Right, guys, so that's the front end done, which was a little more challenging than I thought it was going to be. Not that it was very challenging, but I was hoping the shocks would have dropped right in. Now we're on to the back end where we have a slightly different setup where I'm not too worried about the shock having to fit into the lower A-arm like it does up front. I can just use 2 screws and pop them in. Let's get at it. By the way, if anybody watching has any tips for me for the dark impact, because again, I took this thing out for about 20 minutes and I managed to break the chassis. So I don't have a lot of runtime on this kit. I don't know kind of the ins and outs of it. I've done some research. I've heard about the ball diff in the rear kind of going kaboom if you put too much power in. But if you guys have any other tips or tricks for me, please go ahead, leave them in the comments below, because this is still a pretty foreign chassis to me. New shocks. Oh yeah. And in case you guys are wondering what kind of hardware I'm using, this is just M3 hardware. Check that out, guys. How good looking are those shocks? They look awesome. How will they perform? I don't know. Let's get those tires back on. Well, that's still pretty bouncy. It's probably just about as bouncy as it was when I had the stock shocks on. But so I've got some tuning to go, guys. Definitely, just because we put oil-filled shocks on doesn't mean the tuning is done yet. Still going to need to play around with some different shock oils and spring loads, stuff like that, to find the right, that perfect medley. I got a new chassis in, by the way, just came in last week, so I'll swap the chassis over and finally get to do a running video, knock on wood. Hopefully I don't wreck the truck this time, wreck the buggy this time. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, giving a little bit of love to the Tamiya Dark Impact, getting some new suspension on there, running video to come shortly. If you don't mind, guys, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate all of your support, and as always, be excellent to each other.